Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Metagame Book Club, Ready Player One, and we are doing week 3. So, as you already probably know, this is brought to you by ISTE and ISTE Games and Sims, and also with some help from Inevitable Betrayal. And now let's get started discussing week 3. Now, these are our different facilitators who will be popping in and out as we're going. And as a reminder, we are using Oasis for EDU as our hashtag. And next week will be our last hangout. And, it opens tomorrow, Ready Player One. So next week we will be talking about Ready Player One. Go ahead and if you have any pictures, put them up on Flickr for us. We love to see them all. So let's get going. So I'm going to do the education part kind of quickly. Okay, so let's go to our overview. So we're going to just talk a little bit about social metacognition and the metagame. So let's get started. Social metacognition. Okay, no spoilers here, but 3 is the magic number from Schoolhouse Rock. And what's kind of happening, you've been seeing social metacognition along the way, but this last part of the book really brings it in to where Halliday is like, you can't be the sole hunter here. You have to actually get with 2 other people, and you all have to do the key at the same time. So while Halliday really seemed like he was doing the lone wolf thing, and he was going off by himself, at this point in time, and I think maybe we have some things coming over the mic, so everybody check your mic, please. But what we're looking at now is social metacognition. So next slide, please. Okay, and you've probably seen this in the book. This is the email that gets sent out. This is when Parzival realizes we can't do this alone. First of all, we can't open the door alone. There has to be 3 of us. And the other thing about it is there is no way we're going to beat the Sixers army by ourselves. So he sends this out. And I'm just gonna make a little and I am just going to make the comment here that if this was a gaming guild, now Parzival had sent this out like the day before, and he didn't want to give them a lot of surprise. But what Parzival didn't do, which was kind of interesting, which anybody who has played a lot of multiplayer games, the thing of it that he did was he went ahead and he decided that they weren't going to really talk about this battle much at all. Seriously, he was just going to have people run in. He was going to get everybody together that he could. Everyone was going to have to run into where the Sixers army was, and anybody who got to live just got to live. And that's very different than what you see in a lot of massively multiplayer online games. People strategize. People make plans. People will spend weeks deciding on what plans they're going to do in games. But I wanted you to start thinking about what I wanted you to start thinking about here really was social metacognition. And next slide, please. Okay, now Artemis's reaction, and now remember, Artemis is really used to being a solo player and used to doing things herself. So her reaction was spam the entire Oasis asking for help. And the thing about it is, she seemed skeptical. She didn't think anybody would necessarily come to their aid, but we learn differently. Next slide, please. Okay, now social metacognition is when a group is involved in planning, selection, connecting, tuning, and monitoring the learning of a group. And this social metacognition, this isn't led by a teacher or an instructor or a professor. This is when a group is aware of how the people in the group learn, and they do whatever is necessary to go ahead and learn more. This is a really good example of what guilds and MMOs do. So while Parsifal threw out this invitation for everyone to come, to come and play and to come and fight, in a lot of groups that are more organized, and there's some mention of them with the clans in the book, clans are really similar to guilds that you see in most massively multiplayer online games. And this is where they organize, make decisions on how to learn, and actually help everyone learn. Next slide, please. And this picture here, and this is from our YouTube channel. Here's the thing about this. Well, you might have just thought that this was maybe a Kandinsky painting. It does look almost like a Kandinsky painting. Actually, this is a group of 20 different players who are doing a raid. This is on the back of a dragon, and for the players to defeat the dragon, they have to work in such sync that they get the dragon to actually roll without anybody falling off the back of the dragon, which is very, very interesting. And the reason why you'll see the lights and everything like that is because there is constant movement. And this is this is totally the whole group deciding who can play what roles, who can learn what roles, them planning, tuning, making selections on what they're going to do. So this is what social metacognition is about. In the classroom, social metacognition is most often seen, quite honestly, the research shows it shows up in math classes where math teachers put students in groups and have them work on problems together. And in those math classes or those statistics classes, there's usually somebody who knows one part and another who knows another part, and they all have to work together to get to the problems. And this picture, we have to thank Grid Hunter for this picture. I wanted to show you another example of something that happens every year in World of Warcraft. And they get between 2,000 and 4,000 people to answer a call that's a lot like Parsifal's call. Now, this is done a little differently. What it is they invite everyone to make a character that is a pink-haired gnome, and they do the gnome run for cancer. And that heart we just saw was, about 2,000 people on one server meeting up and forming that heart and doing a run in a game for cancer. Now, the thing about it, I will tell you, World of Warcraft, the company that does that, Blizzard, has kind of caught on to that. So now they've made it that when people try to do it, they'll separate people on different servers so that the server doesn't come crashing down. But I know myself and a number of people who are on here now have been involved in the pink-haired gnome run and have crashed the server from the company. And here's another example. This happens in June. This is the troll run. And this is a troll run for gay rights. And as you can see, lots of rainbows. It doesn't quite get the 2,000 to 3,000 numbers, but there's a whole group of people who answer a call, who are all gamers, and come out. And there's just something about being in that big group of people, knowing you're online doing it, that's quite similar to the experience you get with being in, say, the audience. And whether or not that is a football game or a concert or you're seeing a band, there's something about everyone going together and everybody going for the same purpose that gets everyone watching that. Oh, and this is one of the examples I want to show you. This is one of the monsters that shows up in raids a lot. I couldn't find a good picture of Udasta, so I brought up Thok. Now, Thok is a monster that groups of players in World of Warcraft, this is one of the older ones, but would get together, whether it would be in 20 or 30 person groups, to figure out how to take the monster down. And I wanted you to have another look at that screen. I showed you the screen before that kind of looked like a Kandinsky painting. Now, this is what it actually looks like if you're playing a game. This is how fast things are going. This is the fury of things happening. So, when you're reading about, when you're reading about Ready Player One and you're reading about how the fight's going on, think about, for most people, and while we're getting a good description, for players, it's going to be a blur. It's going to be a blur like that where you don't know what's happening. And the other thing about it is take a look. If you'll see that orange circle that's on top and that star, okay, these are the objects that get placed over the tanks. And the tanks are the people who are taking the most damage and running in and doing the first hits. Now, these objects are placed over those players because everything goes so fast and furious that the healers, the people protecting the tanks, might no longer be able to see them or find them in this mess. So these markers are these markers are actually put over the players so that other players can find them. And it's not just for healing. Sometimes people get these markers because they're the person that everybody needs to run to or line up at. So again, with social metacognition, it would be the group deciding who's the person who's most likely to be able to get to the spot or pick the right place to stand or knows how to get out of the different problems that are happening. So let's put a marker over them so other people can go ahead and run towards them so that they don't get killed in a fight. And and this we're ending up on these, and this is another one of our blurry ones. And with that bar overhead. Now, Wade Parsifal discusses what it looks like when you die. This is a death scene. When I took this picture, I was dead. And this is one of the big groups that it takes more than one guild to go ahead to go. This is the corrupted Shah, and this takes more than one guild to do it. To go ahead and do this. In World of Warcraft, you could put a group of 40 people, 40 players together. Oftentimes, two groups of 40 players or 80. 80 people would come to try and kill one of the huge monsters, which are known as bosses. And that little thing that might be a little hard to see at the top, it says 6 minutes until I can come back. In a lot of games, unlike in Ready Player One, when you die, it's not like you no longer exist. Okay, in a lot of games, you can go ahead and you can come back. You have to run from a distance. You'll take damage points. You might lose different things, but this is an example of social metacognition. Everyone trying to figure out what to do, and if everybody dies, everybody gets killed off, it's called a wipe. And if there's a wipe, everybody then tries to figure out what can we do not to wipe again. And this kind of learning, people are watching what other people are doing, and there'll be a lot of negotiation of who's going to play what role after that's done. Now, this last one that we'll be pulling up, just wanted to mention this because it's the name of our book club anyway, the metagame. And it's the act of finding and using information beyond the game that influences game decisions. You saw this constantly in this book. And it continues to happen. And I was just going to throw up one of our friends' favorite games, Ingress, so you can see another example other than World of Warcraft. So Ingress, it's a mobile game. It's exceptionally cool to play. There's two factions. You have to physically go to the place to go ahead and take over different portals. Pokemon Go was actually based off this. So Ingress went out first by the people in Google, and then they did Pokemon Go. But here's some slides that our friends have done, and this one, again, is from Grid Jumper, and you can go up to level 16, and when we were doing our session on it, she was asking, what kind of strategizing is needed at levels 8 through 16? And it's not only strategizing, but people go onto the internet, and a lot of different Ingress groups also have Slack groups where people share information back and forth. Now, because there's two factions, one green and one blue, one, one is the enlightened, one is the resistance, so that they can't spy on each other. People will make Slack groups and share information there. So it's done privately. And now these two other slides are coming up from a wonderful webinar that Michael Flood did with us. Now, take a look at this. This was when ISTE was doing their conference in Philadelphia. Michael went ahead and he mapped out the different places for us. So we could have a look of what the PA Convention Center looked like ahead of time before we got there. That's an example of the metagame. And it's also an example of social metacognition. I mean, Michael knew that perhaps some of us weren't as good at players as he was. So he started to help us get information so that we could go ahead and play the game. I think we have one more slide left. And another example of metagame. This is Michael Flood's tips and tactics for setting and going ahead and starting up. Again, this is an example of, while this was outside the game, Michael went ahead, got this information, made these resources for us, and he really didn't care whether we were enlightened or resistance. He was sharing it no matter what. So I'm going to end this pretty much here. I don't think I have another slide. But what I wanted to end it with was, if you are teaching with games, look and see what kind of metagame exists for your students outside the game. When you Google it, are there Let's Play videos? Are there blogs? Are people discussing it on, say, Tumblr? Are there discussion forums? If you see a lot of this, then you can expect that the game is very rich and that there's a great community. And if your students start playing the game, they will be able to get involved with the community, with social metacognition, and also being able to go out to a metagame and share resources. So that's about all I have, and I believe we'll be turning to someone else now. Yes.
Hi guys. So I like doing my remembering science. Somehow when we read these science fiction technology books, people die. And it's just trying to really think about how and why we led to these moments. So we lost some pretty important characters. Um, I don't want to forget the beginning of the area of the novel where the Sixers 101, I do want to put a spoiler alert ahead, but when they first Percival was rejected their offer. They bombed his stack, so we lost his family members that he was staying with. His parents had already died previously to the events of this happening, but his aunt Alice, her boyfriend Rick, granted they were not on good terms, but other his neighbors, Mr. Miller, Miss Gilmore, and then the 22 other people that lived in that stack of RVs. They just died and because of the Sixers. And also Dido. Dido was quote unquote brothers with Shoto, but they were just really, really good friends. They weren't like blood. They were not from like the same parents. But Dido's him they gave his real name, Toshiro Yoshiaki. And then on the other side note of all the avatars and the big fight at the end, their characters died because the Sixers used this incredible time bomb that was bought at this auction for an obscene amount of money that would destroy anything within a certain area. And when I say everything, it was everything, all player characters. So that didn't immune the Sixers. So even the person that used that item also died with it. So it was just this massive scene of once they started fighting, it was when they saw that the fight was not going in their favor, the Sixers pulled out their trump card. But Percival had a trump on his own because he wasn't some character that died. He had a secret up his sleeve. he had the secret item of that arcade coin when he beat Holiday's record in Pac-Man, I believe. Someone might want to correct me if I'm wrong about that.
It was
But
a perfect game of Pac-Man,
perfect
That's
game
wasn't
of
right.
it?
Pac-Man.
Yeah. He had to play a perfect game.
Gosh, that's hard to do. But sorry to bum people out, but I just wanted to put a memoriam out there. But let's kill on to all the fun stuff.
Well, at this point, we're talking about IOI, and that's what Blue was just mentioning. Now, you notice there are several of Wade's aliases. Boy, level 3 opens in an unusual way, doesn't it? He's immediately captured. And of course, they have to blast through his door. They take him, and now he's working for IOI inside, using Sam Lowry and Harry Tuttle as his aliases from the movie Brazil. Now, I loved this. I don't know how many of you saw the movie Sneakers. Those are the images on the right. But of course, when he came up with his password, right, he gets part of it from the movie Tron and part of it from Too Many Sneakers, right, from the anagram for SETEC Astronomy. I don't know how many of you caught that. And by the way, if you're interested, on a later slide, I have a link to a site that has quite a bit of the trivia, the pop culture from the movie and the book, but not all of it, right? Now, when the friends all show up, and as Kay mentioned, the social metacognition, they all come in as mechs and in these very powerful monster suits. And of course, I grew up with Gundam Mobile Wing, over there in the upper left, and then of course Brave Raiden, and there's Mecha Godzilla in the center, and of course they're saying, Han, we'll have that shield down, and of course they keep looking for Wade to bring the shield down so they can all get involved.
And as much as I'd love for them to have Spider-Man and his Leopardon drawn that Parzival took, I do not think I will be seeing that in the movie.
Yeah, I know. And that was Radine, by the way. I said that wrong. But here's Twilight Zone. And of course, Short Circuit. So there's all these wonderful pop culture references to times when we think of a dimension to another world and what he's going through. And I give you the link there for more pop culture. Of course, none of this would be possible for understanding all these games without thinking about all the game consoles. And in chapter 37, he starts taking a tour of them and the various games. They're racking their brain, trying to think through. And here's a quick look at the early Nintendo, the 8-bit system. Most of these I have. I gave away my Pong system in the upper left. I could just shoot myself in the foot, right? Metaphorically speaking, with the Sega gun over there. I have gun interfaces for the PlayStation and for the early Xbox as well. Very nice systems. And of course, here's the original Xbox and the PlayStation, the one. So now on to tech.
Of course. So now we're on back to everyone's favorite game show, Fact or Fiction. So first off, we're going to go ahead and we'll start with voice recognition. So we have lots and lots of options out there. So we see voice recognition whenever he is giving commands before he's about ready to get C-sectioned. So we have Dragon, we have Windows, we have Google Voice, we have Tatsit. We have lots and lots of other versions. Don't forget Alexa or Google Home or Bixby, and of course Siri. So obviously lots and lots of voice recognition. So we have Fact as well, and Cortana. Yes, Trish is typing in the chat here. Yes, I did leave out Cortana. I apologize.
If I could take a moment for that one.
Sure.
For voice recognition. So in the novel, even though he has his cool artificial intelligence servitude, when he gets arrested basically for going into Deto's prison and forcibly walking for IOI, he is basically in a prison cell, walking, forcibly walked, with he has this chain thing on, this bracelet. I mean, he is in servitude. He basically has a small little room that is his own, and he has voice recognition for that room. For watching TV, lights, sink, and bathroom, he just does voice commands. And it's just crazy to think that even though he's pretty much in jail, he has this. It's commonplace. So I just wanted to look at that. For in the novel, that's just something that's there and available to anybody.
Definitely voice recognition for the masses. So another key instrument technology out there is plasma welders. So these are the plasma welders that are there on the left-hand side, mostly tied to welding, that are out there. The one on the right, that is not a plasma welder. That's actually a concrete saw. But that's probably what most people thought of whenever they're reading what was going on in the book. Does that sound about right to everybody? Is that what you all were thinking or pictured in your head?
Sure. Well, actually, I have to confess, I was thinking of Doctor Who and the sonic screwdriver being the all-purpose tool.
I was actually thinking about, I know it wasn't that, but if you remember in Star Wars where they take the lightsaber and stab it through a metal door and then just start cutting with it.
Okay, so lightsaber, so handheld. So
yeah,
not a little carry case and then electrodes and all other good stuff.
Well, see, you're worrying about physics and reality, whereas we're thinking fantasy.
So with plasma welders, I'm going to say that it's fact-ish. They do exist. They are just not in a handheld or a sonic screwdriver or a backpack version yet. I'm sure eventually we'll get there. Computer self-destruct commands. So, do they exist? So we have a drive from Autothis, the 128S and the 128T. This is a solid-state drive, and actually this is a solid-state drive you can text, and it'll do one of two things. It will either go ahead and rewrite everything over with mumbo-jumbos, or it'll go ahead and it'll break the readers, the headers on it, so that way it can't be read. Now, the other one is Run Core Invincible Drive, and so it offers it for the discerning taste. It offers intelligent destruction or physical destruction option. So these are two newer solid-state drives. Have not seen anything for any of the discs or anything that runs with the plate, with the platter. That doesn't seem to work. So what you have is you have intelligent destruction, which takes time. It rewrites over all your data on the drive, and just basically replaces all your data with just random wingding style content. So basically it destroys everything. Physical destruction is a little bit more interesting. It requires that this drive be actually hardwired into your power supply. And if you choose the physical destruction option, it gets electrocuted. So it sets up. But unfortunately, what most people think of whenever they think of self-destruct computers is what YouTube has a fun time with is thermite destruction when it comes to your your computer, or Mission Impossible as well. Burn, smoke, fire that are out there. So this is a video you can find out there if you just look for thermite. And of course, we love fire. And what you see dripping out the top of the computer is actually the melted platters and the aluminum that is dropping out of the case. So but again, you have to have enough thermite to do this. Yes, it is hard on the office. It would, catch fire. That's molten aluminum pouring out there onto the ground. So if you were actually in a house or anything else flammable, that would definitely cause fire.
This is when we say, kids, don't try this at home, okay?
Exactly. So, and actually what's interesting for this setup is they actually use sparklers to serve as the ignition device for their thermite. So Wade obviously did not have time to light the sparklers. So it's getting there. You're starting to see something there, but it's definitely not something that's tied to any sort of voice operation yet. But it's getting there. You're getting there because people are really, really concerned about their data.
Now, on that note, I have to pipe in for just a moment because, like for the Alexa, you can write voice apps in Java for her quite easily, right, and upload them. They opened up the development, so if you wanted one desperately, you could create it.
Well, exactly. But most of the programs out there to redo your data typically take a while to rewrite all your data. So I don't know that you can get it all done in the matter of minutes that Wade had before so people couldn't find out who he actually was.
But I have to say here that when this book was originally written, 2011, these things were not even this far.
Exactly.
And it's amazing how much the book has become realized just in 7 years.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. I mean, it's interesting to see all of it, and we definitely get a lot of technology. Definitely borrows from everyone's favorite stories. So it's definitely something we can play around with. So next up.
Whoa, 1 second. I'm sorry, I want to chime in this one too.
Oh, okay. Everyone likes the fire discussion. Go.
Well, okay, I don't know if it's my formal Black Cat ways, but I mean, he had his computer there. I mean, if we're looking at it like, if anyone's seen The movie from 2003, or in War Games, I mean, you don't want people seeing your stuff. You're there at your computer. I mean, you tack on some magnets to erasers and just wipe everything down, and then you'll get in the clear.
As long as they're really, really strong magnets, yes.
Oh, yeah.
They'd have to be really strong, just so you know. I have some experience with that.
Well, especially when you start getting into double platters and some of the ways the hard drives are set up. Now, solid states are a bit more fun, but you get those different pieces that are there. So, subcutaneous microcomputing. So we find out that as he's going through the intake for his indebtedness, that some people have some interesting biological microcomputers that they have put in their bodies. So right now what we have is the RFID chips. So we're seeing people inject them between the thumb and forefinger. We actually have a company in Wisconsin, of all places, as well as a few of the European ones that are out there. So different ways to go ahead and do that. And then, of course, the bottom one I couldn't resist because as a big fan of Neuromancer and a lot of the biopunk novels that are out there, I found this picture here with somebody who had, obviously it's doctored, but had to put the USB port, the plugins for go ahead and use. It's interesting that they do have a food input behind their ear, which is kind of an interesting way to eat, but okay. They can play around with that. So it's kind of fun. You have someone set that up themselves. And but we have a lot of subcutaneous devices. So this is an insulin pump. So this is very common today. Common way for those that have type 1 diabetes, where they have to constantly monitor their insulin levels. So we have a lot of that in the medical field. But when it comes down to actual microcomputing itself, that's put under the skin, something you could actually run a device off of or run the Oasis off of, that's actually in your body, or a phone embedded in your tooth. Not yet, but obviously there's lots of people who want that, who are going that way, since they're trying that out for the little RFID tags, and they're using everything from, as Lear mentioned in the chat, paying, going wallet free, being able to go ahead, open doors through security clearance, to open doors that recognize you. So there's lots of different ways that people are using RFID. And of course, not so much as, unfortunately, identity theft that way would be kind of messy. But you definitely know someone stole your identity.
Well, yeah. See, that was the problem, is being able to be scanned as you walk by, and then someone to extract your identity as well as to authenticate that you can enter. That's the difficulty.
Next up, the dark web. So Blue Live has a lot of presentations on it. So this is typically a good way that they describe what's going on out there in the web. And so you have the surface. This is what you find on all your favorite search engines. And then you have the deep web, which is things that cannot be found on search engines. And then you have the dark web, which everyone is scared about. So you have lots of stuff that are out there and it's hidden, and the thing is there's only specialized browsers. It's always been said, dark web's always been presented in the media with a sinister undertone. We also have our lovely hacker groups that are out there. Leave now or enter the dark web. This is a really cute way to set that up. And then this is also from Blue Live's setup here about the surface web, which is what most people are used to, is 4% of the web. The deep web, a lot of it is just simply databases that you don't have access to but are still web enabled. So that's about 90% of the content. And then the dark web is about 6%. So not used to going out there. So
you know that last slide where it says 6%. I attended an FBI briefing. Mm-hmm. This was a long time ago, I'll admit. It's like 2007, and at the time they said up to 60% of the images on the web, and we're not going to segregate which web we're talking about. When you flip the bid on them, the underlying information is that dark web there. So the image looks harmless on the surface, but if you have the ability to flip the last bit, underneath it is illegal pornography, etc.
Exactly, and that's the interesting pieces that we don't really talk a lot about with the internet, but now it's something that's definitely more, as cybersecurity continues to come to the front with everything that's going on right now. With the issues of breaches, data breaches, and different things like that, you're starting to see more and more focus on trying to figure out where this is. So,
by the way, on that same note there, Chris, for those of you who are curious about that kind of technology, see the movie or the book Along Came a Spider. It's featured in that.
Gotta do your evil laugh. So the truth is out there is my response for the dark web. Pulling on my X-Files point there. AutoCab. That's about where it is right now. Here when it comes to your auto driving and your autopilot and your autonomous vehicles. The idea is that you would not necessarily have to ever drive it yourself. You could just simply sit there, and you could be sitting no matter, there's no front or bottom, and you just go ahead and have the conversations with someone else in there, just like a moving conference room. Unfortunately, we've had some issues. There's been some issues with Uber and their autonomous vehicle that they unfortunately hit a woman, unfortunately, and they're trying to figure out what went wrong. So right now, when it comes to the autonomous driving cars, it's fiction. Prototypes are being tested, though, so it might be something that we see in the next couple of years. Handprint gun locks. So one of the things that happens, one of the first thing Wade does when he gets free of indentured servitude is he buys himself a gun. So for safety, which is interesting because there's a 24-hour lockout on it, which is kind of interesting. So these are some things. I did some searches, and so here's a biometric gun lock. You can see it covers up the trigger guard. Basically, you have to go ahead and run your fingerprints on it to unlock the lock from it. There's also a prototype from a Telegun, which has, again, another fingerprint swiper on the grip that locks out the gun. And right now, it's fact-ish. What I mean by that is that the technology is starting to come out there. It's still mostly prototyping, or it's limited to only certain models of handguns. So it's getting there when it comes to that type of piece, where you have a gun that will not unlock or will not work for anyone that does not have their handprint logged into it. Now, the interesting part of it is where does that information get stored? So now we're talking about putting biometric information in the hands of your gun manufacturers and anybody else they share the data with. The immersion rigs. So now we're jumping to where we get to Ogg's place, and they all have their own little immersion rigs. So jointed robotic arms inside a sphere, hamster ball is how it was described in the book. So some immersion rigs from last time. There's this lovely model. But wait, there's more. And Virtue Sphere. So that's out there. So we have Virtue Sphere, where you see this one, which is a plastic. So the ones on either side of the middle image are plastic mesh balls that the individual is running around in. So as we discussed last time, it may seem like that's easy, but holding your arms up and trying to walk for as much as you do in your game, like a game of World of Warcraft or a game of Minecraft or something along those lines, where you're gaming for hours on end, the fact that you have to go ahead and support yourself standing up and also walking awkwardly on a sphere. This is a wonderful setup. But I know, and the middle one there is the mesh ball, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lear to talk about the next image.
Well, this is a continuation of the Virtue Sphere, and this is the one that I was in 2012, and that's my research partner, Andy Stricker. He has two of them at Air University at Maxwell Air Force Base. They're the only Air Force base to be using them, and they're in the same room, so that the military person inside. And by the way, when you run in this, you close up the hatch, just in case you're wondering, because you can run in every direction. And when you stop running, like I said last time, the ball continues to roll. And it's rolling, a few miles per hour, in case you were wondering. If you were running really fast, so is the ball. So it takes a while for the ball to slow down. And of course, she's firing and she's wearing a wireless HMD. And the head-mount display devices that I tried was a little more elaborate version than what she has on there. It was a little heavier, but oh, so nice. And they have slides up on SlideShare for anyone who's interested in seeing more about that. But that's Spinoza Quinnell up in the upper right.
Well, exactly, because that's the interesting thing about these orbs that, again, the book didn't get into, is that even if it's a mesh ball moving, you're going to have the momentum. You're going to have the weight of the sphere moving, and you're not going to be able to stop. Like some of the actions he was using, as far as his ability to stop on a dime and change direction really fast, that's not really, the physics of that doesn't necessarily line up. But then again, that's me.
That's right. Trish just brought up a good point. She was talking about how heavy the HoloLens is, and that's an entire computer sitting on your head, right, for augmented reality, and you can see through it, but you also are seeing a display in 3D, like a hologram in front of you. But the early HMDs weighed 26 pounds, and they had to have an arm, like you were describing, Chris, to hold it up or it'd snap your neck.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing about it, is what's funny is that moving to this type of technology, I think, would make all the mudders happy, because a lot of the people who played the multi-user dungeons before we started seeing so many digital games, one of their big complaints was that when it came to games like World of Warcraft or EverQuest or whatever, there was no weight penalty. And so you could carry as much stuff in your bags and everything like that you want. Things never rusted. Your gear never really lost too much durability, things like that. But now with this type of stuff, you actually do have to carry weight. And again, you could think about them having fun. Like, imagine if they put in your game, like a game of World of Warcraft, and they put a backpack on you that actually mirrored the weight that was what was in your backpack in game, in addition to all your running.
That's right, and that's why it was so funny when the bag of holding they mentioned, in the book, and then of course when we think back to the early D&D and what Gary Gygax did, with, and of course with his family, and naming some of the devices in game after them, like Tensor's floating disk, for being able to carry some of your weight.
And that's the interesting pieces that you see there. So with this immersion rig, it's a fiction, but we're getting there, and the rig actually might end up getting better than what actually Wade has. So it's kind of interesting to see how we're going in different ways, because remember last time we talked about the omnidirectional treadmills that we had talked about they were probably a bit easier to move around with and get that stop and start than necessarily running around inside a big ball. An automated jet. so as Parzival and H climb into a plane, they realize, hey, there's no pilot. So it takes off, the self-flying plane. So what's interesting about this is that robots already run the skies. So this is an article talking about Boeing's adventures with self-flying planes. Everyone's heard of an autopilot. And the thing is, though, is most of what you see now is you do have you have unmanned aerial vehicles, but you see they're attached to something like this, where you have cockpits and you have screen displays and you have pilots who are sitting in a modified cockpit, some at some undisclosed location, flying them around. And here's a little bit better version of seeing what they were seeing with a lot less people. So when it comes to automated jets, they're fact-ish, but only if the plane were actually flown by pilots. So if they were drones and flown by pilots, then that's going on right now. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily to the passenger level yet, where like Southwest is flying you around and drone pilots. And fiction, if they're autonomous, if they're just going on their own, you just punch in a GPS and they took care of everything else, then that is fiction. Because currently, right now, everyone has to have a pilot tied to it. Yes, the tick and the drones.
Yeah, at the very end of the Amazon version of The Tick that aired last year, and then, of course, the last 6 episodes this last month, at the end, you see all the drones from Eris all appear and monitoring them.
And, of course, the Tick is just smiling at them and waving. Where Arthur's freaking out. So, additional tech. So, we have a tribute to mechs as part of the final battle.
Yes, when everyone shows up, I as part of your fact and fiction, I thought, well, what about mechs? Do we have those today? I mean, after all, we're all mad over robotic mech suits, and that's what the team is wearing for the social metacognition moment where it takes 3, right? So here's some real life mechs. This is the Curata, and of course, there's a video on it. You can see her get inside, strap in, put on the belt, and then you see in the lower left it running down the street. It's driving, and you'll notice it's much larger than that truck that it's next to. And then, of course, this is the inside of it in the lower right, so you can see what she's seeing once we close it up. She has quite a few displays, but she's not looking out like you would in a car, so you're not getting that kind of viewpoint, right? And then on this side, here's some others. This is method 1 in the upper 2 left sides. They're a little more futuristic looking. And of course, you'll notice he's looking out. We can see him, he can see us, so he has greater visibility, but he's huge. She's smiling. And this is your gesture-based recognition. When she smiles, these guns go off, and I forget how many rounds per second, but it's very impressive. But I would be in trouble because I'm grinning all the time, and smiling over here. I'd be shooting like crazy, right?
Hey, nice to meet you.
We'd be saying, "Nice going, Tex." No.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, yep. Friendly fire. But yes, several people are mentioning Pacific Rim, which is coming out. The second one's coming out. So there's your big mechs.
But you can buy these, in case you're wondering, are they fact or fiction?
For the low price of? Well, having mini cannons, I don't necessarily think there's too many governments would be happy with too many individuals having mini cannons.
Well, you notice the guy over on the left doesn't have any cannons.
That's true.
So that's the method 1. You kind of wonder if this is a spin-off of Aliens, with the loader that she's running, or what is this mech designed to do, right?
Well, exactly. The one in the upper left definitely looks like it's they're working on making it have the manipulation just with the finger joining that it has. It looks like it's definitely looking at moving large boxes or moving cargo, or basically what you saw on Aliens as far as moving around heavy stuff.
That's right. And he moves his arms, and of course they move too. In many of these, there's joysticks, there's a variety of controls, and then there's also something that's almost like the Kinect that's monitoring their gestures, like her facial recognition, for her smile. And it's interesting what they're trying to select for the appropriate gestures for the appropriate response. And that's where I think the research is interesting.
Well, that, and also it's interesting because that design's been copied in the movie Avatar, at the near the final battle where the sergeant jumps into the mech suit and then jumps out of his plane and then gets to fight with everybody. So while holding his breath for a really, really long time.
While you were all doing, fact or fiction, I was going to say, in a virtual world, mechs exist. Okay.
Oh, this is technology in the real world in the book.
Oh, I'm doing in the virtual world. You can now go into a virtual world.
Yes, you can.
There's no problem with you buying.
No, there's no problems with you having a mech in a virtual world with as many cannons as you want.
Yes. Just wanted to show you that, okay? Because I'm at Grendel's children's store in Second Life, and I'm in the mech section, okay?
Well, now that you mention that, in 2006 I made one, and it's kind of comical. It's my version of an AT-ST from Star Wars with little stubby legs, okay? And you wear it. Yeah, it's got a monster-sized squared-off head. It looks a little like a Godzilla shrunk down with an AT-ST's legs, and I did it one of those little speed build classes for like a 2-hour event, and it's so funny because I'll take off the head and the body part, and then I look like someone who's wearing cyber legs, where my legs are hidden. Yeah, I know it seems a little gruesome to the audience out there because you guys are going, what? But it's a lot of fun to wear. If anyone wants a copy of that, just let me know.
Well, it was funny because as I was doing research for this, one of my favorite videos I stumbled upon was two individuals, like how they have the front end of the horse and the back end of the horse. Well, they had two people doing that, but instead of a horse, they were an AT-AT. So they had them just walking around. All right, we're on to discussions.
Okay, so now we're wrapping up because really it's what we've been all waiting for. The movie comes out tomorrow. So go see the movie, okay? that's your homework. Tell us about what you thought, what you liked, and what you didn't. Put it up on Reddit. Now, here's some other events that are coming up in virtual worlds and things like that you might want to go to. The Virtual Center for Archives and Record Administration, they are taking proposals until the 31st. This is a group of librarians. And by the way, in Second Life, there's a number of great librarians who are figuring out how do you actually have a library in Second Life. How do you have the links? How can we communicate with each other? They are doing their conference this year on Passion for the Truth, trusting information in the fake news era. Up until the 31st, you can go ahead and still send in proposals, but the conference will actually be on the evening of Wednesday, April 18th. And please go next. Some other things. Okay, the people involved here. We are doing one last trip or field trip with Virtual World's Best Practices in Education. It is Easter Ethnography, the Noble Garden Exploration. Please come and join us. That will be next Tuesday. And we'll put out the information. The other thing is feel free to come and visit us. Virtual World Best Practices, they will have the area open until April 10th. So you have time to go ahead and come in for this. And then wrapping it up, as always, our hashtag Oasis for EDU. And remember, keep the internet weird. We have until April 23rd to get Congress to ask for a congressional review of the repeal of the net neutrality. So that's all, and thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.